He had no family, no real shelter, not even a coat warm enough to face the sharp wind clawing down the mountain. Gideon Nash had learned early to survive on scraps and solitude. At 16, he knew how to ignore hunger, push through cold, and keep moving. But that morning, with his stomach tightening after 3 days without food, and the sky promising a snowstorm before nightfall, he almost turned back. Almost. A flash of red on the snow stopped him. It wasn't a trick of the light. Blood. Bright, fresh, too much to ignore. He hesitated, eyes scanning the slope. Then he saw her, a girl no older than him, face down in the snow, leg bent awkwardly, her buckskin dress soaked with blood. Her hair was dark, tangled, and stiff with frost. She wasn't moving. Gideon's gut told him to leave. He didn't know her. He didn't need trouble. Tribal affairs could get a boy like him killed. But he didn't move. He knelt, reached out, touched her shoulder. She flinched, eyes flying open in panic. Her hand fumbled for a bone-handled knife at her belt, but she was too weak to lift it. "Easy," he said quickly, hands raised. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to help." She said something fast in her own language, breath hitching, pointing weakly toward the eastern peaks. He didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. Home. She needed to get there, and fast. When she tried to stand, she collapsed, her injured leg crumpling beneath her. She cried out as Gideon caught her. Her skin was ice cold. "Dead Man's Pass?" he asked, pointing the same direction she had. "You're trying to cross that?" She nodded. Tears were already freezing on her cheeks. Gideon looked at her, then at the path ahead. 2 days of brutal terrain. He barely had enough food for himself, and his winter gear was more whole than fabric. The cold could kill both of them, but leaving her would definitely kill her. He took a breath. "Okay, we go together." Or not at all. What followed was 18 hours of brutal, silent struggle. He dragged her, carried her, braced her weight through icy trails that would have broken seasoned mountain men. She slipped in and out of consciousness, muttering things he couldn't understand. Prayers maybe, or warnings. He didn't know. He just kept going. By the time they reached the border of her people's land, she was able to stand. Barely. She looked at him once, pressed something into his hand, a small carved stone, then turned and vanished into the trees. Not a word, not a goodbye. He stumbled back to his cave just as the sky began to lighten. Frozen, sore, half-starved, but alive. He'd done something good. That should have been enough. It wasn't. As he neared the cave, he stopped. His breath caught. Dozens of hoof prints surrounded the entrance. Fresh. Whoever had been there had come in numbers, and they'd been looking for something. Carved into the tree beside his shelter was a symbol he didn't recognize. 3 lines crossed by an arrow. It hadn't been there before. His pulse hammered. Slowly, he circled the cave 3 times, hand never leaving the old knife on his belt. Nothing was missing, but things had been moved, his blanket, his pot, the small pile of river stones he'd collected. Just enough to tell him someone had gone through everything he owned. They were looking for something, he whispered. He opened his fist. The carved stone. Smooth, black, and warm despite the cold. Symbols etched deep into it. Symbols he couldn't read. His stomach turned. This thing, whatever it was, had drawn people to his cave, and they hadn't been friendly. Then came a sound. A branch snapped. Not the wind. Someone, heavy had stepped on deadwood. Try and be quiet. Failing. He pressed himself against the rocks and peeked through a crack. His heart dropped. 3 men on horseback. Warriors. Faces streaked with paint. Feathers braided into black hair. They weren't just passing through. They were watching his cave. They knew he was inside, and they weren't alone. More hoofbeats echoed beyond the ridge. He was surrounded. One of the riders raised a hand, and behind Gideon's cave, another horse snorted softly. He gripped the stone tighter. His lungs refused to work. Then the lead warrior dismounted, slow, calm, hand resting on a tomahawk that looked like it had seen blood. When he spoke, the words were clear and sharp in the cold air. "Boy, who helped our daughter? We know you were there." Gideon swallowed hard. Daughter? The girl he'd saved, she wasn't just a tribal girl. She was the daughter of someone powerful. "Come out," the warrior said. "We wish to speak." Everything in Gideon screamed, run. But he had nowhere to go. The cave behind him was a trap. The mountains ahead, suicide. And in his fist, the stone burned like a brand. He knew, somehow, his decision here would change everything. He stepped out of the cave slowly, hands in the air, the carved stone hidden tightly in his fist. As soon as he showed himself, the world changed. Men on horseback rose from behind rocks and trees like they had been part of the mountain itself. 30 of them, maybe more, all of them armed, all of them watching him. No one spoke. The lead warrior walked toward him, stopping just 5 feet away. He had long, black hair and deep lines on his face, not just from age, from battle, from pain. His eyes held stories Gideon couldn't begin to understand. This was no hunting group, Gideon thought. These men were fighters, and they were here for something serious. I am Takakota, the warrior said in slow, careful English. Ayana is my daughter. Gideon's stomach flipped. He had helped the chief's daughter, and now the chief stood in front of him with enough warriors to burn down a town. She told me what you did, Takakota said. How you carried her through the killing cold when you could have left her. Gideon didn't know what to say. He felt small, shaking from cold and fear. Anyone would have helped, he said, though he knew it wasn't true. Takakota gave a tiny nod. No, most would not. Most fear us too much. He looked back at his warriors, then returned his gaze to Gideon. We are hunting the men who shot her. 3 white settlers. They had rifles. Ayana tried to warn them away from our sacred land. They shot her. Gideon felt his chest tighten. White men. Settlers like him. The tribe might think he was one of them, one of the attackers. We tracked them to your mountain, Takakota continued. Their path went past your cave. We thought maybe. He didn't finish the sentence. Gideon understood what he meant. They had wondered if he was part of it. But Ayana described the boy who saved her. Thin, hungry, gentle hands, kind eyes. That did not match a killer. Gideon relaxed a little, but he knew this wasn't over. The men who attacked Ayana were still out there. And if the tribe found them, blood would be spilled. The soldiers would come after. And who would they find? Him, the only white boy in the area. They're still here, Gideon said quietly. Somewhere in the valley. I think they're camping down below. They probably think they're safe. Takakota's eyes narrowed. They are wrong. A young warrior said something in their language. He pointed down the valley. Takakota turned serious. What is it? Gideon asked. There is smoke from their fire. They are cooking meat. Takakota looked straight at him. Meat they stole from families they murdered yesterday. Gideon's breath caught. These men weren't just dangerous. They were killers. And they were close. The chief stepped even closer, his voice hard but respectful. You saved my daughter's life. For that, I offer you a choice. Gideon didn't move. He didn't speak. Leave these mountains before the sun sets. Run far and never return. Takakota paused. Or stay. Help us stop the men who killed innocent people on sacred ground. The stone in Gideon's palm pulsed. He looked down at it. Something told him it wasn't just a gift. It meant something more. Responsibility. A bond. But before he could answer, a gunshot rang through the valley. Then another. Then screaming. Takakota's men moved like water, mounting horses, vanishing behind trees, ready for battle. But Takakota didn't move. He kept his eyes on Gideon. Choose now, boy, he said. The killing has already begun. More shots followed, this time closer. Gideon turned and saw them. 3 figures running up the mountain through the trees. They were dirty, bleeding, carrying rifles. The settlers. And they were coming straight for his cave. They're coming here, Gideon whispered. They know where I live. Takakota's expression turned cold. Do you know them? No, but they've been watching my cave. They know it's here. The lead warrior's hand tightened around his tomahawk. It was only seconds before the settlers would reach the cave. The tribe was hidden, waiting to strike. If the settlers made it to the cave, a massacre would happen. Gideon would be caught in the middle. Get behind the rocks, Takakota ordered his men. Let them come. But Gideon's eyes locked on one of the settlers' rifles. He recognized it. Brass fittings. Special shape. It belonged to Marshal Crawford, the federal lawman who had gone missing 2 weeks ago. These men killed a marshal, Gideon said. If you kill them here, he added quickly, the army will come. They'll blame your people for Crawford's death. Takakota froze. He understood what Gideon was saying. Dead settlers on tribal land meant soldiers, blame, and maybe war. The settlers were getting close. Gideon could see their faces now, wild-eyed, desperate like cornered animals. They were heading right for the cave, planning to use it as a fort. If they take the cave, Takakota warned, we'll have to dig them out. Many will die. Gideon's heart raced. He was the only one who could stop this. The only one who could stand between both sides and prevent what was coming. The stone in his hand seemed to beat like a heart. He stepped into the open, right in front of the settlers. That's far enough, he shouted. The lead settler raised his rifle. Get out of the way, boy, or I'll drop you. Behind the rocks, the warriors readied their weapons. One wrong move, and the mountain would drown in blood. But Gideon didn't move. Instead, he did something that surprised everyone, even himself. He sat down, right there, on the cold ground, legs crossed, hands on his knees like he had all the time in the world. The settler's rifle twitched as he tried to decide whether Gideon was crazy or just stupid. The other two men stumbled up behind him, out of breath, bleeding, panicked. They had lost their horses. Their faces were thin, their clothes ripped. They looked like men who had been running for days. What the hell are you doing? The leader growled, aiming straight at Gideon's chest. Waiting, Gideon said quietly, for you to make a decision. The man squinted at him. His eyes flicked toward the rocks, sensing danger but not seeing it. You can shoot me, Gideon said, but if you do, you'll have much bigger problems than you think. The three settlers started to look around nervously. They knew something was wrong. It wasn't just a strange boy sitting calmly in their path. It was the quiet, the weight of eyes they couldn't see. We just need your cave, the leader said, trying to act calm. A few hours. That's all. That cave isn't mine, Gideon said, pulling the carved stone from his pocket. It belongs to the people whose land you're standing on. The settlers froze. They knew that kind of stone. They'd been in tribal territory long enough to understand its meaning. That small, polished rock wasn't just decoration. It was a warning, a promise. You're working with them? One of the other men asked, voice shaking. I'm trying to keep you alive, Gideon said, which is more than you deserve after what you did to Marshal Crawford. The leader's eyes narrowed. What do you know about that? Because you're carrying his rifle, Gideon said calmly, and his blood's still on your clothes. Behind the rocks, 30 warriors waited for Takakota's signal. One mistake, and all of them would charge. But Gideon knew that once the killing started, it would be impossible to stop. Someone had to keep it from happening. Here's what's going to happen, Gideon continued. You're going to put your weapons down and surrender, or you're going to run, and hope you reach the border before winter finishes you off. The leader let out a sharp laugh. We're taking the cave. But just as he stepped forward, an arrow slammed into the ground 6 inches from his boot. Then another. Then a third. Each one closer than the last. The settlers spun around, trying to find the source. But they saw nothing. Just rocks and wind. 30 warriors, Gideon said, his voice calm. All around you. All with orders to take you alive, if possible. He paused. But they're not feeling very merciful after what you did. The fear finally reached the settlers' eyes. This wasn't a few angry men. They were surrounded by an entire war party. You led us into a trap, the leader shouted. No, Gideon said. You led yourselves, when you chose to spill blood on sacred ground. Another arrow flew past the second man's ear. He broke. Dropping his rifle, he raised his hands high. I surrender. I surrender, he cried. Please don't kill me. But the leader wasn't done. His mind was gone, lost to panic. His rifle swung toward Gideon. If I'm dying today, he hissed, you're coming with me. The shot rang out. But Gideon never felt the bullet. A tomahawk struck the leader's chest before his finger could finish pulling the trigger. The man dropped to the ground in silence. Takakota stepped out from behind the rocks. His warriors followed, swift and silent, moving like water. Within seconds, the last 2 settlers were bound and on their knees. It was over. Gideon stood, brushing snow from his legs. He didn't feel relief, only the weight of what had just happened. The shot that had been fired, the one meant for him, had left a deep scar in the stone beside his cave. A fresh bullet mark. It would be the first thing the cavalry noticed. Takakota examined the mark jaw tight. His warriors searched the dead settler and found something worse. Military maps, a dispatch case, and a small metal badge. These men didn't just kill a marshal, Takakota said. They attacked a military patrol. Gideon's stomach dropped. That meant the army wouldn't just investigate. It sent a full company. And when they arrived, they'd find dead settlers on tribal land and one white witness. How long before they come? Takakota asked. 3 days, Gideon guessed. Maybe 4. But when they get here, they'll see white bodies and assume the tribe attacked. Takakota didn't answer, but the lines in his face deepened. My warriors want to leave the bodies where they are. A warning to others, he said. Gideon stepped forward. That'll bring war. One they can't win. One of the tied-up men, a younger one, began to cry. Please don't scalp me. I never killed anyone. I just ran. Takakota looked at him with cold eyes. You took their money. You ran with them. That makes you guilty. But Gideon had an idea. What if the army never finds the bodies? He asked. Takakota's eyes narrowed. Explain. Make them disappear, Gideon said. Say they ran into the deep canyon and died in the storm. No graves. No blood. Just vanished. The army will still come, Takakota warned. Yes, but they'll find me, Gideon said. I'll tell them the truth, that the criminals came through, stole food, then disappeared in the blizzard. It happens all the time up here. Takakota didn't answer right away. He looked at the bound men, the snow, the mountains. And these too, he asked. They come with us, Gideon said. They'll confirm what happened, that your people acted in defense, not as attackers. The young man nodded fast. Yes, I'll say everything. Crawford tried to arrest us. We offer a bribe. When he refused, Dakota shot him. I swear I'll tell it all. Takakota didn't look convinced. The army won't believe the word of white criminals. Maybe not, Gideon said, but it's better than war. Then a scout ran up, speaking fast in their language. Takakota's face darkened. What is it? Gideon asked. Soldiers, Takakota said. On the Easter Trail. 20 of them. Hours away. Gideon felt the cold in his blood. They had no more time. He stepped out of the cave slowly, hands in the air, the carved stone hidden tightly in his fist. As soon as he showed himself, the world changed. Men on horseback rose from behind rocks and trees like they had been part of the mountain itself. 30 of them, maybe more, all of them armed, all of them watching him. No one spoke. The lead warrior walked toward him, stopping just 5 feet away. He had long, black hair and deep lines on his face, not just from age, from battle, from pain. His eyes held stories Gideon couldn't begin to understand. This was no hunting group, Gideon thought. These men were fighters, and they were here for something serious. I am Takakota, the warrior said in slow, careful English. Ayana is my daughter. Gideon's stomach flipped. He had helped the chief's daughter, and now the chief stood in front of him with enough warriors to burn down a town. She told me what you did, Takakota said. How you carried her through the killing cold when you could have left her. Gideon didn't know what to say. He felt small, shaking from cold and fear. Anyone would have helped, he said, though he knew it wasn't true. Takakota gave a tiny nod. No, most would not. Most fear us too much. He looked back at his warriors, then returned his gaze to Gideon. We are hunting the men who shot her. 3 white settlers. They had rifles. Ayana tried to warn them away from our sacred land. They shot her. Gideon felt his chest tighten. White men, settlers like him. The tribe might think he was one of them, one of the attackers. We tracked them to your mountain, Takakota continued. Their path went past your cave. We thought maybe. He didn't finish the sentence. Gideon understood what he meant. They had wondered if he was part of it. But Ayana described the boy who saved her. Thin, hungry, gentle hands, kind eyes. That did not match a killer. Gideon relaxed a little, but he knew this wasn't over. The men who attacked Ayana were still out there. And if the tribe found them, blood would be spilled. The soldiers would come after. And who would they find? Him, the only white boy in the area. They're still here, Gideon said quietly. Somewhere in the valley. I think they're camping down below. They probably think they're safe. Takakota's eyes narrowed. They are wrong. A young warrior said something in their language. He pointed down the valley. Takakota turned serious. What is it? Gideon asked. There is smoke from their fire. They are cooking meat. Takakota looked straight at him. Meat they stole from families they murdered yesterday. Gideon's breath caught. These men weren't just dangerous. They were killers. And they were close. The chief stepped even closer, his voice hard but respectful. You saved my daughter's life. For that, I offer you a choice. Gideon didn't move. He didn't speak. Leave these mountains before the sun sets. Run far and never return. Takakota paused. Or stay. Help us stop the men who killed innocent people on sacred ground. The stone in Gideon's palm pulsed. He looked down at it. Something told him it wasn't just a gift. It meant something more. Responsibility. A bond. But before he could answer, a gunshot rang through the valley. Then another. Then screaming. Takakota's men moved like water, mounting horses, vanishing behind trees, ready for battle. But Takakota didn't move. He kept his eyes on Gideon. Choose now, boy, he said. The killing has already begun. More shots followed, this time closer. Gideon turned and saw them. 3 figures running up the mountain through the trees. They were dirty, bleeding, carrying rifles. The settlers. And they were coming straight for his cave. They're coming here, Gideon whispered. They know where I live. Takakota's expression turned cold. Do you know them? No, but they've been watching my cave. They know it's here. The lead warrior's hand tightened around his tomahawk. It was only seconds before the settlers would reach the cave. The tribe was hidden, waiting to strike. If the settlers made it to the cave, a massacre would happen. Gideon would be caught in the middle. Get behind the rocks, Takakota ordered his men. Let them come. But Gideon's eyes locked on one of the settlers' rifles. He recognized it. Brass fittings. Special shape. It belonged to Marshal Crawford, the federal lawman who had gone missing 2 weeks ago. These men killed a marshal, Gideon said. If you kill them here, he added quickly, the army will come. They'll blame your people for Crawford's death. Takakota froze. He understood what Gideon was saying. Dead settlers on tribal land meant soldiers, blame, and maybe war. The settlers were getting close. Gideon could see their faces now, wild-eyed, desperate like cornered animals. They were heading right for the cave, planning to use it as a fort. If they take the cave, Takakota warned, we'll have to dig them out. Many will die. Gideon's heart raced. He was the only one who could stop this. The only one who could stand between both sides and prevent what was coming. The stone in his hand seemed to beat like a heart. He stepped into the open, right in front of the settlers. That's far enough, he shouted. The lead settler raised his rifle. Get out of the way, boy, or I'll drop you. Behind the rocks, the warriors readied their weapons. One wrong move, and the mountain would drown in blood. But Gideon didn't move. Instead, he did something that surprised everyone, even himself. He sat down, right there, on the cold ground, legs crossed, hands on his knees like he had all the time in the world. That night, snow fell gently across the peaks, dusting the trees and softening the scars left behind. Gideon sat by a fire for the first time in days. Not just any fire, but one surrounded by warmth, voices, and people who saw him as more than a stranger. He sat close to Ayana, the girl he'd carried through the cold. Her leg was wrapped carefully now, healing slowly. She smiled at him from across the flames and began teaching him words in her language. He listened, repeating each one quietly, careful to get them right. Around them, the tribe shared stories of storms, hunts, loss, and survival. And slowly, Gideon started to understand not just the words, but the meaning behind them. These weren't just people hiding in the hills. They were family. They had suffered, but they stood together. And now, they had made space for him. When morning came, he woke up warm. Wrapped in a thick blanket made from soft animal hides, he almost didn't recognize the feeling. Comfort. Safety. He wasn't used to it. Takakota sat near the edge of the camp, sharpening a blade. Gideon walked over and sat beside him. Good sleep? The chief asked. Best in a long time, Gideon admitted. Takakota nodded slowly. You did something rare. You risked everything to help someone with no promise of reward. I just didn't want her to die, Gideon said. And now, the chief added, you've saved more lives than you know. The truth hit Gideon in that moment. His one act of kindness, one choice, had changed everything. He had stopped a war before it started. You're not a boy anymore, Takakota said. The mountain has tested you, and you stood strong. Gideon looked out over the valley. The sun was breaking through clouds, casting gold light on the snow-covered trees. What happens now, he asked. You live, Takakota said simply. You learn. You hunt with us, walk with us, and protect the land you now call home. Ayana limped over, her smile wide. She handed Gideon a small bowl of soup. It smelled of herbs and meat, rich and warm. He accepted it with a quiet thanks. Don't worry, she said. We'll teach you how to make it next time. Gideon laughed. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like running. He didn't feel like hiding. He felt right where he belonged. Later, he helped with small chores, carrying firewood, gathering snow to melt for water, checking the snares the hunters had left the night before. It wasn't much, but every time he returned with something useful, the others nodded with approval. He was learning their rhythm. That night, they told stories again. One of the elders, a man with deep wrinkles and a voice like slow wind, told the tale of the stranger who walked between fires. A boy who came from nowhere and stood between two burning worlds, choosing peace when violence seemed easier. As the story ended, everyone turned to Gideon. He realized they were talking about him. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded, heart full and throat tight. When he laid down to sleep, he opened his hand and stared at the carved stone. The symbols still shifted when the light hit them, like they held secrets only time would reveal. He whispered to it, "Thank you." In the days that followed, he grew stronger. The cold didn't bite as hard anymore. The food, simple but filling, gave him back his energy. Ayana taught him how to track animals. Takakota showed him how to move silently through the forest. The other warriors treated him with quiet respect, no longer seeing him as an outsider. One day, while out with a small hunting party, they found a lost deer trapped in snow. Instead of killing it, the hunters freed it, watching it disappear into the trees. Why let it go? Gideon asked. Because mercy feeds more than meat, one of them said. The mountain remembers kindness. Those words stayed with him. Sometimes, Gideon would climb the ridge and look down into the valley below. He wondered what the soldiers were doing, if they still searched for bodies, if the lie they told would hold. But deep down, he knew the truth. The world had moved on. The army would find nothing in the canyons. No graves, no signs of battle, just wind and snow. The real story, the truth, lived only here, in the camp, in the fire. In the quiet way Takakota's people watched the land, protected it, and mourned what had nearly been lost. And Gideon, the boy with nothing, had found everything he never knew he needed. A place to stay, a people to protect, and a reason to keep going. Snow piled higher as the days passed, blanketing the world in silence. Life in the winter camp slowed, but never stopped. Every chore mattered. Every hand helped. Gideon learned how to fish through ice, how to fix torn moccasins, how to tell the weather by watching birds. No one said much, but no one needed to. The tribe worked like a single body, quiet, strong together. Ayana healed quickly. The wound on her leg faded to a scar, and she limped less each day. She spent more time with Gideon, laughing now and then, teaching him how to use a bow without snapping the string or bruising his arm. "You're not bad," she said one afternoon after he hit the target. "For someone who used to live in a cave." He smirked. "Used to?" She raised an eyebrow. "You're one of us now? You're not going back to that cave." He didn't argue. He didn't want to. Takakota still said little in camp, but he watched. When Gideon offered to help the elders gather firewood or help the children carve toys from bark, the chief's nods were subtle, but approving. It meant something. Respect had to be earned, not asked for. But not all was peaceful. One night, a scout returned with news. He'd spotted fresh cavalry tracks near the lower pass. Not the same patrol, this was a new group. More men, heavy horses, wagons. The kind of force that came only when the government expected trouble. "They're searching deeper now," Takakota said, looking for something they think is buried in these hills. Gideon knew what that meant. If the soldiers kept searching, sooner or later they might find the ravine. The rocks, the dragged branches, the bodies they'd try to hide. If they see the dead men, the whole life falls apart, he said. Takakota nodded grimly. That night, no one slept well. By morning, Gideon had made a decision. We need to move the bodies, he said. Hide them better, somewhere no one will ever look. You want to dig through snow and frozen stone? One warrior asked. They've been buried once. They can be buried again, Gideon said. And so a small group set out. Gideon, Ayana, and 3 warriors carried shovels, furs, and sleds. They moved quickly, speaking little. By the time they reached the ravine, the wind had picked up. Snow swirled around them like smoke. They dug. The ground was hard, but not frozen all the way through. It took hours, their breath steaming in the cold. Finally, they moved the bodies into a deeper crack in the canyon wall, a place no one could find without knowing exactly where to look. They left no markings, no tools, no trace. Only silence. When they returned to camp, exhausted and frozen, Takakota stood waiting. They won't find them now, Gideon said. The chief looked at the tired group. Good, but we're not safe yet. That night, Gideon sat alone with Ayana by the fire. The sky above was filled with stars, and the air was too cold to move much. Do you ever think about leaving? He asked suddenly. She stared at the flames. Sometimes. But this land, it's who we are, even when it's hard. I never had a place, Gideon said. Never belonged anywhere. Ayana didn't answer right away. Then she picked up a stick and drew a small symbol in the snow beside them. 3 lines crossed by an arrow. The mark from your tree, Gideon said. It's the sign of the protector, Ayana explained. The one who stays. The one who guards others when they can't guard themselves. He stared at it. You should learn to carve it, she added. You've already earned it. Her voice was quiet, but sure. Later that week, they spotted smoke again, this time from the South Trail. Another patrol. This one carried a banner. The army was closing in, sweeping the whole mountain range. Gideon and Takakota stood on the ridge, watching. If they find anything, they'll come hard, the chief said. But if they don't, Gideon asked, then this winter will end quietly, and no one else will have to die. A cold gust swept over the hilltop, and for a moment, Gideon thought of his old life, the cave, the hunger, the fear. He remembered how easy it would have been to keep walking that day, to leave Ayana in the snow. But he hadn't, and because of that one moment, he had a home, a family, a future. 2 days later, the army came. Not a patrol, a full unit. 30 soldiers on horseback, 2 wagons with supplies. A captain in front wearing a long blue coat and a silver badge that caught the sunlight. They weren't just looking, they were expecting something. Maybe a fight. Gideon waited in the same place as before, near the cave. Alone, just like last time. The others were hidden deep in the trees, watching, waiting. If things went wrong, they'd disappear before a shot could be fired. The soldiers stopped 10 feet away. The new captain wasn't like Morrison. He was younger, sharper, and less patient. His eyes moved fast, checking every detail, the fire pit, the old footprints, the cave walls. You Gideon Nash? The captain asked. Yes, sir, Gideon said calmly. We've been told you had contact with 3 fugitives, claim jumpers, murderers, and possibly traitors. That true? They came through weeks ago, Gideon answered. Tried to take supplies. Shot up the place when I said no. Then ran into the mountains before the snow came. Did you follow them? No, Gideon said. Didn't want any more trouble. The captain stepped forward and stared hard at the bullet mark, now blackened and faded with soot. He tapped it with a gloved finger. This fresh. No, sir, Gideon said. That's old. From before they showed up. I've been hunting out of here all winter. The captain grunted. His men began spreading out, checking the area. They didn't find much. Just worn tools, a burned-out fire, and a boy with calm eyes and no fear in his voice. The captain turned back. We found 3 bodies in the deep canyon. Torn up, half frozen. One had martial bars on him. You know anything about that? Gideon paused, then nodded slowly. I figured they died out there. Snow came hard. That canyon's no place to travel unprepared. The captain frowned. You're sure they didn't circle back? You didn't see them after? No, sir. The captain didn't move for a long time. He stared at Gideon like he was trying to peel the truth off him. But there was nothing to see. The story held. He finally gave a slow nod. All right, son. We'll head back. If you see anything strange, you report it. You understand? Yes, sir. The captain turned and walked to his horse. This land's rough, he said without looking back. Not many people survive alone up here. I'm not alone, Gideon said quietly. The captain didn't answer. He mounted his horse and rode off. The sound of hooves faded into the trees. Gideon stood there until the wind covered their tracks. Then he turned and walked back toward the ridge. From a forest, Takakota stepped out. They believed you, the chief said. Gideon nodded. For now. Takakota looked toward the horizon. Then it's over. Is it? Gideon asked. The chief was quiet a moment. Maybe not forever, but for now, yes. The tribe moved deeper into the forest that evening, back to their main winter shelter. A place Gideon hadn't seen yet. Ayana walked beside him, pointing out old trees, worn trails, hidden landmarks. You'll learn them all, she said. I plan to. When they reached the camp, elders welcomed him with soft nods. Children stared with curiosity. Warriors gave him space. Not cold, not warm, just watching. But over the next few days, that changed. He helped repair a storage tent after a windstorm. He carried water for an old woman who thanked him by giving him a string of dried berries. He sat beside a boy learning to carve an arrow and showed him how to steady his hands. And the tribe saw, one night, as snow fell softly outside the main lodge, Takakota called the people together. Everyone gathered in silence. A fire burned in the center, bright and warm. We have lived here many winters, the chief said. We have seen hardship. We have lost many, but we are still here. He turned to Gideon. This boy came from nothing. No home, no blood ties, but he chose to protect one of our own. He stood between war and peace. He spoke when others stayed silent. Takakota looked to the crowd, and now we welcome him as one of us. There was no cheering, no loud celebration, just quiet nods. Acceptance. A place. Ayana stepped forward and placed a new necklace around Gideon's neck. A carved piece of wood, marked with the same symbol as the one on the tree. 3 lines, crossed by an arrow. Protector, she whispered. Gideon stood still, overwhelmed. His chest felt too full. His hands trembled. The fire cracked. Snow drifted down outside. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't just surviving. He belonged. Winter began to lift. Slowly, like a long-held breath. Snow melted from the branches, water trickled down the hills, and the air no longer bit through bone. Life in the camp shifted with the season. Hunters prepared for the first trek of spring. Children chased each other barefoot. Old songs returned to evening fires. Gideon stood at the edge of the camp one morning, watching the sun break across the mountains. His hands were calloused now, his back stronger, his eyes older. Not from time, from truth. He had changed, not because he had to, but because he chose to. Takakota joined him quietly. The land changes, the chief said. And so do men. Gideon nodded. I never thought I'd find peace out here. Not like this. Takakota studied him, eyes sharp but kind. That's because you thought peace came from quiet. But it doesn't. Peace comes from choosing the hard thing when it's easier to walk away. Gideon understood that now. The first time he'd seen Ayana bleeding in the snow, he could have left. Should have, if survival was all he wanted. But something inside him had said no. Something louder than fear. Louder than hunger. Compassion. He remembered what it felt like. That moment when his hand touched her shoulder. When she opened her eyes and saw not danger, but help. That was the moment everything changed. Ayana approached from behind, carrying 2 bundles. You're coming with us, she said, handing him one. The spring hunt begins today. He smiled. What if I miss? Then you'll learn, she said. Same way we all did. They hiked together through the woods, moving fast but light, like the trees knew them. Gideon didn't speak much. He didn't need to. He saw how the tribe moved, not over the land, but with it. They weren't hiding. They were living. protecting, respecting. Later that evening, they returned with fresh meat and full packs. The fire was bright, laughter loud. For the first time in months, Gideon saw everyone smiling without tension beneath it. Takakota raised a bowl to him from across the flames. To the boy who became a brother. Cheers followed. Not loud, but real. Ayana leaned closer. You'll stay when the snow melts? He looked at her, at the people around him, at the place that had changed him without trying to. I'm already here. That night, as the stars blinked quietly above the mountains, Gideon held the carved stone in his hand again. It was smoother now, warm by touch. The symbols hadn't faded. If anything, they looked clearer. He understood them now. They didn't mean strength or power. They meant choice. The choice to help when it's not easy. The choice to stand when you could run. The choice to do right even when no one's watching. That was the lesson the mountain had given him. Not every fight is with fists. Some are with the heart. And the hardest battles are the ones no one sees, the moments where you decide who you are. He closed his hand around the stone and whispered, I chose right. The wind carried his words, soft across the hills. And somewhere in the trees, the mountain listened. Moral lesson. Doing what's right may cost comfort, but it gives you something comfort never can. Purpose, belonging, and peace that no storm can shake.